Hello, and welcome to episode 71 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we talk all things flying and aviation in midlife. My name is Ben. I'm a commercial-rated pilot here in the Atlanta metro area, flying a Cessna 182. I sometimes call the Beast. We have with us tonight, as always, my friend Brian, a private pilot based in Nashville, home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie. He's flying a beautiful little Cherokee 180 named Lucy. Good evening, Mr. Siskind.
How's it going, Sage, Ben, Diva? Late.
Yes.
Late today.
Late. You know, it's all about me. It's my world. Y'all just live in it. Also joining us tonight from the left coast, the best coast, Portlandia, our sport pilot extraordinaire, Ted, flying the flight design CTLS we love to call the plastic egg. I probably should just say good afternoon, Ted. Since
good late afternoon. Yeah.
How are you?
Hey, I'm doing really well. I had a great midlife podcast afternoon over the weekend. I had something weird in my fuel, and so I texted Wendell Geek and said, "What is this?" And we had a conversation back and forth about the ethanol in my MoGas and why it looked weird. And then I was out flying, and right behind me, in sequence, waiting to take off at this airport, was one of our midlife pilots, Wendy. And so she texted me and recognized the plane. And I just thought that was great. It's like, here we are, just, spanning the country with midlifers now.
It's awesome. I keep wearing my midlife hat, hoping to get recognized in public. I don't think it's going to happen because it's me. Also joining us tonight from her home in the Lexington, Kentucky Basic Charlie, as it's written here, our friend CFII Erica Gilbert from Gilbert Aviation, also a very popular and growing YouTube channel, Aerosafe, does really great videos on weather-related stuff for general aviation. She's also involved in wings flight training. Hey, Erica, glad you're joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me again.
Awesome.
You're our only hope, Erica.
Oh, that's not true. You guys do great work here.
A few housekeeping things we want to get through. We broadcast live on YouTube, usually every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. But when I have a work thing, we have to push it out every now and then. I try to prevent that as much as I can, but it couldn't be avoided tonight. So I apologize for having to delay it a little bit. The live chat is open for questions and comments. We're going to be asking for a lot tonight. Audio podcast is at iTunes, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts are found. Be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. We're anxious to read the new reviews on there, and I'm not above bribing you with some stickers. We love getting feedback and your suggestions. So send us an email, or you can send us voicemails at our website, which is midlifepilotpodcast.com. You can find all of our links to Patreon, contact information, everything at that website. So we'll hope you'll check it out. Brian, what have I left out? We've got some new Patreon members since the last episode.
It's all true. Do you want to read them? Do you want me to read them?
I was kind of handing it off to you for you to read them, but I could have been more clear.
I should have taken that handoff a little cleaner. I just kind of hot potatoed that thing. So by the way, I was distracted because I'm seeing our friends from opposing bases are in the chat, and they were saying, "I don't understand how you can look at this chat and get through the show. My brain doesn't work like that." Bravo. So welcome to the our friends, whichever one it is, from opposing bases. And real quick, we have been experiencing the opposing bases bump like you wouldn't believe when it comes to podcast numbers. I mean, I'm pretty sure that somebody just came and cut my grass at my house just for free. Like everything has changed. Thank you guys so much for, first of all, reading my feedback that I submitted, and I appreciate the response on that. And it was just a good time to hear that. And then also, you guys gave us a shout out, and we ended up hitting #1 in America for aviation podcast because the real number one podcast mentioned us. So that's
exactly the way
that
it
is
went.
the Midas touch right there. I don't know
Yes.
if it's it's kind of like, when Miles Davis would have, some new kid playing in his band or something. As soon as you were in Miles's band, then you were set. So I feel like we're set for life now. We're never going to have to, FBO coffee will always be free. Our whole lives have changed. So we sent the landscapers. So, so anyway, thank you guys really so much. And it really does mean a lot. It really does. I know you guys all feel the same. So real quick, our new Patreon members, we have at the Landomatic level, we have Jeremy T and 901 Aviator. Thank you guys for joining at that level. Then at the Hershey Bar level, we have Adam V and Devereaux C. Thank you so much for hitting us up there. And at the Beast Stall Kit level, we have Eric P, who upgraded from Landomatic. We cannot do this without the support and the help. It actually does cost a little bit of money to do this. And, we'll talk more about this with Erica's son, Wyatt, who's there in the background soon. But really, podcasting or having YouTube channels kind of the only career path at this point, right, Erica? Is that what you would say for your kid?
Yes, actually, yeah. I'm sending him to Full Sail next year for the video
for audio
editing.
engineering. No, listen, you ask it, Wyatt is 10. Look, everybody that's 10 wants to be a TikTok star or have a YouTube channel, I believe. No? Okay, Wyatt is going to actually own YouTube or TikTok or something. That's a smarter move. But anyway, thanks again, Opposing Bases. Thanks again to the patrons. You guys have been instrumental in helping us keep this thing going. So thank you. So that's all that. And then next, I think what I would love to do is just get right into our topic. Ben, do you want to start us off with Erica and special guest Wyatt?
Yeah. So this, I think, came in through feedback at some point in time, and we're spitball this idea. And given the nature of our audience of midlifers, at some point in time, a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us are going to be flying with younger kids, and that can present some unique challenges. When I started flying, my kids were in their mid to late teens, so it was a little bit different for me. And so we thought Erica, having all the experience that she does, and a fine-looking young man there behind her to fly around with, and she's posted a couple of videos with him in there. So on her YouTube channel, can provide some additional perspective. And then we reached out to our Patreon members, and we've got some additional feedback that we'll be presenting. But it does provide or present some unique challenges. I do angel flights about once a month. And we were talking earlier, I really like to go for the younger patients. There's just some, I don't know, there's some sense of accomplishment, or I know it's probably not the right word, but it's more gratifying, I guess, to help someone in need that's a little bit younger in age. And, when they're a patient, it does also present some additional challenges. I did one this past weekend. This was a teenager, like mid-teens, and it was pretty bumpy, and we got above it, but when it was time to land, we were going to have to go through it. And I had asked Atlanta Tracon, who are super awesome, can we get a little bit priority handling? If we can get direct to the airport, it would be great. And, they accommodated. I told them we had a patient on board, wasn't feeling good, and we got direct to the numbers. So I think it's small things like that maybe will help our audience understand, when you do have young kids, you might need to think outside the box a little bit. So, Ted, what do you think? You've got a couple of video clips to get us going?
Yeah. So I have very little to add here. That won't stop me from talking, though. But I did reach out to some of our midlifers that I know fly with kids more, and the one I wanted to hear from. And we're going to play a bunch of those at the end. But I wanted to start off with one here, and this is from our friend Cheapskate, Nate, and he kind of talking about what the issues are.
Hey, this is Nate, or Cheapskate Aviation, as I'm known on Discord and on the YouTubes. I was pretty excited to hear about the show topic this week because it's something I actually have a pretty good amount of experience with, and it's also something I still don't have figured out, so I'm hoping I can learn some from you guys. I have 3 kids, and I fly with them pretty often. I looked through my logbook, and it turns out that 56% of my flight time has been with at least one child passenger. If you've never flown with small kids before, imagine taking a long road trip with small kids. Imagine they're all in the back and they're shouting, Luke's elbow's on my side of the seat, and are we there yet? And I'm too hot, and I'm too cold. And it just goes on and on and on. Now, imagine that car is cramped, it's loud, it's bumpy, you can't pull it over, there's really no climate control, half the kids are like a little bit scared, and every single one of those little monsters has a microphone that is linked directly to your ear. That environment gets pretty rough, pretty fast.
I loved that. The microphone is stuck to your ear. Yeah. Yeah. I know that he'd flown with his kids, and so I wanted to get some feedback from him, and great problem statement that he puts into that. But Erica, you've got Wyatt right there with you, and you fly together. How much has Wyatt flown?
That's a good question. I'd say the bulk of our flying is the big trip that we do.
Oshkosh.
Yeah, Oshkosh
Nice.
every year. So we that's our big trip. I'd say you probably have 30 or 40 hours in the plane with me, just from between hopping around and then also, the trips that we do. And then more if we include the TBM, but I don't really count that because
that's like trips to Florida with Dennis.
Yeah. There's less involvement there. He made a really great point about the microphones. So, and I hadn't thought about this until he brought it up. I would say one really big tip is to get very familiar with your audio panel and how to isolate. Overall, he also made another point about, maybe some kids are scared. I think when it comes to flying with kids, the biggest point or takeaway that we can make is that it's all about setting expectations, both for yourself and for your passengers. And this could transfer to children, spouses, friends, young eagles, angel flights. But setting expectations and realizing that, for us, this is fun, this is exciting. And for them, they may be more mission focused or mission oriented. For us, the flying is a huge chunk of the journey, versus for them, maybe the flying is the means to the end, just to get somewhere. So setting that expectation early on is important.
They should get used to it. Like the parents should introduce it young.
Yes, that's true. So Wyatt's first flight with me, I think he was 4 or 5.
Yeah, I was tiny.
Yeah, so that helps also.
Wait, was that when I had the phone and I forgot to turn it off?
Maybe. There's also, there's a lot more points to be made about passenger briefs and things like that. But I think you guys have some more feedback too. Maybe you want to listen to first.
Yeah, we can get to that. To the point of what Nate said, and to your point, Juliet Echo Foxtrot in our chat brought up a point that I wanted to bring up because it kind of ties into what y'all are saying. I flew my young nieces and couldn't figure out a buzzing on the comms. After some knob turning, I look back to see my niece has her face planted on the window with the mic boom buzzing on the window. You kind of have to mentally prepare for the unexpected. And that's one of them. And the other comment I was going to make, some of us have a little bit older airplanes that don't have an isolate function on the comms. And that I think there are a group of pilots that are regularly flying their young kids, and they're attuned to having chatter going on in the background while listening for their tail number to be called by ATC. I think that's a skill that is developed and not necessarily inherent, but that's definitely something that you have to mentally prepare for before you get into the plane with somebody that's a little bit younger.
Do you not have an isolate, Ben?
I do not have an isolate.
Okay. Yep.
My wife wishes I had an isolate, but no, we don't.
I think Grizzly's got a good point here. Just pull the mic plug. It's not a terrible idea. They're probably poorly positioned to reach to the back seat and pull a kid's plug.
Correct.
But that seems like a decent idea, I guess.
Well, I have a quick question for Wyatt. As much as I really want to talk to Erica, I really just want to talk to Wyatt. So Wyatt, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, when you're flying with your mom, do you feel like it's important to follow the rules as they've been explained to you? Or do sometimes you forget maybe that there are rules to follow? Do you have, I guess my question is kind of like, do you have fun with it? Or do you also sometimes just kind of forget where you are and that, I have to do things a certain way. I can't, go totally crazy in this airplane right now.
So it's when we land and we taxi off. So that's when I have to be quiet. And then sometimes we talk to the controller and we have a little bit of fun.
Wyatt, does your mom let you talk to air traffic control while you're in the air?
Sometimes.
Cool.
He got to rock the wings last year.
Oh, at Oshkosh. How cool is that?
There are not very many people that have had that opportunity, Wyatt.
Do you get tasks while you're in the plane?
Sometimes, like getting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the cockpit organizer. He helps grab the snacks and put things away and helps
that's nice.
Put checklists and things in their pockets.
Do you also, if your mom has fallen asleep, do you wake her up?
She's never fallen asleep, so I don't have to do that.
Wyatt, I think you're going to get ice cream after this podcast is over.
Exactly.
I wish I could. It's dark. Oh, there's one.
Oh, yeah, there's an airplane right over us.
Really close.
Yeah. And
Nice.
Wyatt, do you think that you might want to fly airplanes one day? You don't have to, but I was just wondering if you wanted to.
Probably.
Nodding up and down. Yes.
Probably.
Well, if it's not sooner, it'll probably be later because it's in your blood and there's nothing you can do about it.
That's right.
But
nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, so Erica, I was wondering from a instructor perspective, especially if you were to if somebody was listening to this and they didn't want to listen to the rest of it, and I mean, we're all about retention, I suppose. But look, let's be honest. Sometimes people want the straight dope. So, what would you say are maybe the top handful of things from a instruction perspective that you would say? Here are the things that you need to be aware of, or here's ways maybe that you can grow into being more prepared to do this, or starting with maybe shorter flights, or I don't know. What are your sort of what's your short list of ways to best become acclimated to, especially as a new pilot, from that perspective, taking your children with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in Nate's audio earlier, he made a good point about all the different kids, right? And you made a good point too about the doing shorter flights first. And then really it goes back to setting expectations with a really good, strong passenger brief. So do you guys have a mnemonic or anything you use for a passenger brief?
Safety.
I started with safety, but I just modified it for my plane and checklists, a couple of things that are different. But how about you?
Yeah, I really like safety and I teach safety. And then I also talk about how we can modify that relative to our passengers. So I'll tell a story on myself. One of the first times I took Wyatt flying, I was a private pilot working on my instrument rating. And my instructors had never really pushed the use of a strong passenger brief. And so, being a mom, I'm like, okay, he's going to be buckled in really good. And I did that. I didn't tell him how to operate it because I didn't want him to take it off, obviously. But we get up in flight, we're in cruise, and I hear thump, 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 thump. And I look over and his door was neither closed nor latched, which was incredibly embarrassing and kind of scary as a mom. So, the safety briefing, for those who are unfamiliar, you can Google it, safety passenger briefing, a little FAA pamphlet will pop up. You want to brief on the operation of the seatbelts and the doors, talk about the environmental with the air, fire extinguishers, emergencies and exits, traffic and talking, which is a big one, which Wyatt mentioned. The sterile cockpit procedures are super important. And then the why is your questions. Do you have any questions? And kids are going to have questions, which is part of the fun. From there, flying with kids, or really anyone in particular, you want to explain to them what's going on during the run up, because that could feel a little scary or uncertain. You're sitting there with your feet on the brakes and all of a sudden you run up to 1900 RPMs. So with young eagles in particular, if I'm doing a young eagle flight, I tell them, hey, there's a lot of stuff on this plane. We're going to make sure don't touch it. That's one word. Don't touch. I'm going to make sure it's all working before we take off. You're going to hear me make the engine go a little faster. The propeller's going to spin faster. I'm going to check some stuff just to make sure everything's working before we get up in the air. So just a quick little brief like that can make people understand and have expectations for what's going on. So that's like the small stuff in the plane. If we zoom out a little bit and look at, a little bit more macro before we even get to the plane. Gas. We need gas. That's true. But thinking about potential needs that you can't take care of immediately by getting off at the next exit is really important, and planning ahead for that. Purposely doing shorter legs to accommodate. So when we go places, I really don't like to do more than an hour and a half leg.
Yeah. There was one time we went to Oshkosh and somebody put the key in one of our totes, and
oh yeah, that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
we had to get help hand propping a 172 after disconnecting the P leads, but that's another story. Somebody lost the key.
Somebody.
Planning shorter legs, bringing snacks. Those are the kind of things we've got to think about with the kids, right? And then also, having ways to take care of any physiological needs in the plane, whether, again, the snacks or, bottles are great for young men. Things like that.
Yes.
Hear that, Ted?
Yes. I'll find a bottle. Barry on here.
Ted's using one right now.
Yeah, exactly. Our friend Instigate has a good list here. He said, have an activity kit, reading material, snacks, limited water, as well as giving them a job so they can be involved. Preparing for the unexpected as much as possible. Talking out loud helps too. Do you find that you explain things more?
I do. And I think also that's, part of, I like the strategic dehydration to tactical dehydration on purpose. Yeah. I try not to drink too much coffee beforehand, so that's difficult. But I do. And I think that in some part that's from being a flight instructor, is I just talk through things all the time anyway. And in fact, we were talking when somebody mentioned earlier, pull the mic plug out. There'll be times that if it's a long leg and he's tired of hearing it, he'll just unplug his headset and leave the noise reduction on.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome. I would recommend not. I had a 16 or 17-year-old passenger, and I was doing the safety or the seatbelt briefing. And I told him, I said, you know why they have these seatbelts here? And he looked at me and he said, why? I said, so they know where to find the bodies when we crash. And not go over so well. It does better with adults, but the kids maybe not so much. So
know your audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Know your audience.
Well, we've got in the comments, we've got a lot of obviously people that have experience flying with kids. RH from Opposing Bases says mandatory pre-departure potty breaks. Even if you don't think you have to go. Cheryl says if you see one, use one for the bathroom.
Yeah, I like that.
That's a great one.
Michael Gillette, same thing. Pre-departure mandatory potty breaks. Yeah, it's I noticed a trend here. Yeah, and I get that. That's it's hard planning when if you're in a routine of knowing your biology and doing your pre-flight and then taking off. You're like, oh wait, no, pre-flight, bathroom, and then go. Those types of
which really, by the way, begs the question, Erica. From we've talked about these things before, but from a flight planning perspective, strictly planning with respect to personal minima, weather, alternates, all of those variables that you would normally consider in a flight plan. What would you say are some things that you might want to more deeply reconsider than if you were not flying with kids, in terms of just your route of flight, or, obviously shorter legs potentially, but are there any other variables in flight planning that, does it change your minima or things like that? Turbulence, a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're dealing with any passengers who maybe aren't used to flying as much, or maybe, you don't know if they're going to be able to tolerate as much turbulence, like you said, as you, then, you might, avoid some areas. I have usually I have a 2-hole rule for Swiss cheese. Going to the Swiss cheese model, which I think we talked about briefly last time, is those points in which we make a decision that could be good or bad and then line up to make an accident. When I'm flying with him, it's a 1-hole rule. So if there's one thing that doesn't look good, sorry, bud, but we stay on the ground that day. Yeah. Now, my tolerances and my minimums change with experience. So what may have been a hole for me 3 years ago is probably not a hole for me now. Mm-hmm. So that's important to consider. But the 1-hole rule, I think, is really important.
Is that also tied to, I'm sorry, I was just going to say, does that also maybe tie into that, what you mentioned earlier in terms of expectations setting? Because, Wyatt, when she says, maybe we'll fly, maybe we won't fly, please don't be too upset if we don't go. Do you get that sometimes, where sometimes you just can't go?
No.
We had one recently.
Oh yeah, we were flying back home from Oshkosh, right?
No, not that one. When we were going to go to Nashville a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we were going to go to Nashville, and the weather, and I was sick.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we're going to go.
Yeah.
To add to that, as our kids or our listeners' kids have more experience in the airplane, like Wyatt has, you can expand those minima based on his tolerances are probably increasing as well. He might be able to take turbulence a little bit better after having 30 to 40 hours a time in the front seat with you. Maybe he's a little bit more used to it. And so not only do your minima grow, so does his.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
With Angel Flight, have you had kids really struggle with motion sickness, Ben?
Yeah, so it was pretty apparent to me with all the kids that I've flown, you could tell the ones, and it's kind of sad to say it this way, but that have had a lot of experience in general aviation. Mm-hmm. They would throw the headphones into the plug. They kind of knew when I was picking up an IFR clearance, they knew not to ask any questions. There are subtle cues that you can easily pick up going, yeah, this is an experienced passenger. And then you have some that you can tell and I'll ask them when I'm meeting them and we're discussing the flight, I'll say, do you have a lot of experience in general aviation flying? And they'll say yes or no. And a lot of them would be, they're pretty upfront with that. And so you kind of know how to take it from that point of view. I imagine the Young Eagle flights would be very much the same. There may be some that have done it more than a few times and, have it under the belt, have the experience there. So,
yeah, the first time I took a passenger, after I got my ticket, my passenger threw up. And ever since then, and even then, I always have little barf bags handy, and they're really easy to get to for a passenger. But I can imagine that would be something, especially with an unknown kid, that you want to make sure they're immediately nearby for that.
Right. One Dull Geek asked the question, and I don't know the answer to this. Are kids more, less, or equally at risk for oxygen at higher altitudes? Meaning, are they subject to hypoxia at different levels than maybe adults? Erica, do you have any info on that?
I do not know, to be honest. I would assume that they're less susceptible just because their systems are younger, but then that's also, it's also just body dependent, but I cannot speak.
If you're a CFII, isn't that also being a physician? I'm not.
Yeah.
I thought it was hard.
You get that for free once you get your II. Yeah.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I don't know everything.
Well, speaking of knowing everything, let's go to our other Nate, to Nate Ballard, who submitted some tips for us. Here's his stuff.
I can't tell you the number of times that I've come out to an airplane and done a pre-flight inspection and the magnetos were left on. So with that in mind, there's never any good reason to take a picture or have a kid near a prop ever. So put that on your list. Take a picture by the wing. It's just as good as being near that prop. I'd also recommend if you are flying with a young person and you want them to take controls and cruise, that's great. Just when they do that, encourage them to look outside first instead of look inside. We see a lot of people that are maybe from the video game generation, which is fine, but their natural instinct these days is to look inside rather than look outside. So have them look outside. It's never too soon to think about skin protection. So for our younger passengers, make sure they wear sunscreen, because as we go up in altitude, those harmful UV rays increase quite a bit. Last tip, and this really is just for Ben. Ben, if you're flying with a kid that has no piloting experience and they're sitting in the right seat, just let them go ahead and land the airplane, because we all know they're going to land it better than you.
I mean, it's a fact. He's flown with me enough. He knows better than anybody else. So.
What were your last week? Side loading Ben or side loader Ben?
I think that's what I was last week.
Yeah.
I will say for the record, I love Nate. I think he does a really great job, but I feel like I greased just about every single landing I've ever had with him, maybe with the exception of one. And maybe that's why he's giving me such a hard time. I don't know. That's fine. I'm ready for it.
Those are great. Those are great tips.
They are. One point that I wanted to show in reference to One Dog Geek's question about being susceptible to hypoxia at lower altitudes. Juliet Victor has written, and I've experienced this myself. I've definitely had to slow descents for younger kids to keep their ears from hurting. And that was, I've had one of my mentor pilots said, when you're flying angel flights, especially with the kids, keep it at 500 feet per minimum, or 500 feet descent or less to keep those pressure levels.
When you talked about that, Wyatt, you were nodding your head up and down as if you recognized that too fast of a descent might hurt your ears a little bit. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, but what I do is I chew gum.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Or suck on a Jolly Rancher. That's a good one too.
Yeah. So kids' eustachian tubes are designed differently. They haven't evolved. I went on to a whole nerd thing on this. You'll see there's a little talk here from Cheapskate Nate, but this has always seemed like kids have ear infections. Well, about 40% of kids get ear infections versus about 1 to 5% of adults. And that's all related to that eustachian tube, which is what is causing their ears to plug up. And some stuff I was reading unrelated to aviation was saying, hey, with a pressure change and it gave something that's the equivalent of 300 feet of altitude change, that's enough to disrupt the middle ear. And I was sitting there doing the conversion on the units that they gave, and I was like, oh, 300 feet is enough to disrupt that. And here we are, climbing 500,000 feet per minute real easily for 10,000 feet, right? And so, of course, there's a problem with that. The more climbing there is, the bigger of an issue that's going to be.
And we do have a doctor in the house.
Thank God.
Friend.
An actual doctor, yes.
Michael G., who is a doctor.
Yes.
100% correct, MD approved reference eustachian tube. So thanks for that.
I saw
it's definitely something we keep it in mind. And it's not even for kids, adults that maybe have a sinus issue. You want to keep those descent rates within a decent range.
Yeah, I saw it when I went down that kind of topic. There are earplugs that are meant to release that pressure slowly. And so it's helpful in those cases. They make them for kids and make them for adults. And that is called ear planes. So earplanes.com. And there's special, aviation earplugs that people use in aviation. So if you're flying with a kid a lot and they have a problem with that, that may be something to look into.
Oh, Alpha Golf here says, don't be afraid to include a slow descent remark in your flight plan if needed. So some ATC advice there. That's smart.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, they're
Very
good with
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Well, let me play some stuff from Cheapskate. Nate, he has some tips as well.
I won't say that I have it all figured out, but here's some tips that have helped me out. Number one, and most important, for any cross country, always make sure that every kid has a tablet that is fully charged and has plenty of content downloaded. Not only will that help to keep them entertained, but I've noticed in the case of my kids, it really helps mitigate their fear. And number two, this is probably an obvious one for any experienced parents, but make sure that any small kids go to the bathroom right before you load them up. Not before pre-flight, not before you go to the airport. Do it like right before they get in the plane. You'll also need to plan some extra time for loading and unloading. With small kids, it takes forever to get everyone's car seats installed, headsets plugged in, tablets ready to go. Plus, my kids always want snacks, presumably so that they can throw the wrappers on the floor. And they all want a water bottle and a stuffed animal. It's just a ton of gear, and it takes forever to load all of that through a little single-door Cherokee. Number four, plan on some extra briefing. Kids are pretty much always trying to unalive themselves, so you need to point out some stuff that would be obvious to an adult, like don't run on the taxiway. And a lot of other things like don't touch any of the controls, stop talking when you hear something on the radio so I can listen, things like that. And number five, if you can, bring someone who can act as a flight attendant. Since I have 3 kids and only a 4-seat airplane, I usually can't do that. Usually it's just me and my kids, and my wife stays at home. But on the occasions when I have just flown with 1 or 2 kids and my wife has been able to come along, it's really helpful to have her be able to open up snacks, break up fights, and all that stuff. And number 6, the isolate audio button is your friend. I mostly keep the intercom on so I can hear what my kids are saying and answer questions, help them out, break up fights. But sometimes when I'm busy on the radio or I'm on short final and need to just concentrate, it's nice to just be able to hit that isolate button and not have to hear whatever is going on in the back seat. Side note, that's one feature I really wish I had in my minivan or like one of those limo driver divider things. That'd be really nice sometimes to just not have to listen to what's going on in the back. So those are my tips, but I also have a question for you and all of the listeners. I want to know if anyone has any tips on helping kids pop their ears. I don't know what the deal is, but my 8-year-old just seems to really struggle with that. And so any tips that you guys have? I've tried, chewing gum, trying to get her to yawn, but for whatever reason, she struggles popping her ears.
Yeah, so it's a little out of order there talking about the ear discussion, but I wanted to pull in Nate's feedback there. Wyatt, you've got a tip for ears?
Yeah, you're saying chewing gum doesn't work, so yeah, I'm not sure.
Have you tried bubble gum, like a big massive gum, not just a tiny stick? Okay, it doesn't do it. Okay.
They always say to not do the pinch your nose and this thing,
the Valsalva maneuver.
I do it.
I'm scared to go down the road of playing an MD on TV and suggesting anything because, Brian, I do the same thing and it works every time. But it's hard to tell a young person to do that because they don't know how hard to blow, how far to take it.
Yes.
So.
Well, the whole thing, too, is when you're our age, like, what are you going to do? Break something? Of course. Who cares? Like, this thing's coming on unhinged anyway.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, ears not popping is the least of our problems.
Yeah.
You made a lot of really great points, though. And, one about the tablet is a great point. I make a big effort, though. And along those lines, which I had thought about before we started, was having an external battery. So when we travel on long trips, I have a Jackery battery
It's huge.
It's huge. I charge that up and I can use it to, keep my iPad charged or charge my phone or, if he's got a tablet he's playing on, keep that charged too. But I also make a really strong effort to say, okay, next 30 minutes of cruise, we're having no screens.
Yeah.
We're going to hang out and talk.
Because you can never plug your phone in at Oshkosh. I mean, if you can, it's always going to be crowded with other phones. And
that's true.
Sometimes people's phones get stolen.
Not often, though.
Hey, Wyatt, do you remember, or not do you remember, can you believe that I remember when there was no phones. We are all here old enough to remember when there were no phones. Can you imagine what that must have been like to not have a phone?
Yeah, because I don't have one.
Yeah, you won't. You won't for a long time.
Well played, young Wyatt. Well played.
That's awesome.
But one of the beautiful things about flying is that, we're above the ground, right? We're removed from our devices, and there's only, one singular task, which is to get to where we're going. There's nothing really that we can use to distract us. And when it's two people sitting next to each other, you can share some really incredible, vulnerable, deep, meaningful time together. So while it's important to have distractions or, something to occupy you when you get really bored with talking at each other, some of our most special time is when we have just that one-on-one in the airplane, and there's nothing we can do but get to know each other.
Absolutely. You can't walk away. There aren't as many distractions.
If I could add to that, and we'll get on to our reviews here or to our feedback here in a few minutes, but so my kids are older, and one of the things that I've appreciated, so they're now 18, 21, and 24. When we take trips, and I've done single trips with each of them, now that they're this age, those deep conversations are initiated by them. They're like, Dad, I can't believe that we're going to go down to St. Simon's for the day and get some barbecue. That we have this, they understand the privilege, they get it. And that's been more gratifying, I think, than almost anything else.
Yeah, there is a really special weight to what we're doing. And over his spring break, we went and hung out with some neighborhood friends who live just, right at the school. And I was talking to his parents where kids were playing and telling them about Oshkosh and all that. And the dad looks at me and was like, does he have any idea how
lucky
he is?
Yeah.
Well, I think that experience happens even with anybody that I've shared flying with, especially if you're on a slightly longer trip, because you can't really talk through the whole time. I mean, or gosh, I hope, nobody has to listen to me for that long, but just the idea, what I love is after you've been in cruise for a while and you've had all those conversations, and then there's some natural point where things just kind of quiet. And it reminds me of when I was a kid, to be on a road trip or something and just staring out the window because we didn't have all these things. And just that the shared time, but shared quiet time is really precious stuff, whether with children or grown children. So Wyatt, I mean, do you think that you'll remember these times fondly when you grow up and you'll be thinking about flying with your mom like this in these years?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So we got One Dog Geek in the chat for you, Wyatt. Not going to lie, I'm a little envious of Wyatt getting to ride in the TBM. And I'll second that. That is my lottery plane. So we're very jealous of you.
What do you think about riding in the TBM?
It's a big privilege, but
you've got a cool mom.
You recognize that, and that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, is there, I'm trying to think, there should be some sort of a charitable organization for just pilots that have better planes than you, where they go around to other pilots and pick them up and take them on rides.
You just ramp it up. So Erica has the access to the TBM. Her next, it's going to be a Gulfstream. There's going to be a pilot that comes by and puts her in the right seat of a Gulfstream.
It's the trade up program.
Exactly.
I think that's a much bigger jump than you think it is, but I would think
it is. Yeah, no, it is. But that's the first thing that came to my mind. So, Brian, do we have some feedback that you wanted to get to?
Yeah, I'm just going to make up some first before I read the actual review.
I put you on the spot. I apologize.
No, that's all right. The first feedback is, why is Erica not on the podcast every week? We keep listening, hoping that she will show. And when she doesn't, I just turn it off and sadness. No, that is not a review. All right. So that was just my warm up. No, there's a review here. It's called, it's from the Apple Podcast Reviews. So thanks for those folks. It's called Midlife is What You Make It, from our friend the Badger pilot. They tried to bribe me with stickers, he said, but I already have some, so this one is free. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted discuss the unique struggles and triumphs of flying in midlife, whatever midlife means to you. Regardless of your age, this show is a must listen for those hoping to fulfill their childhood dreams of flying, but didn't start until later in life. 5 stars. So why, you got to think about this. There might be something that you'll do when you're as old as we are that's totally brand new. You'll be bored with flying at that point, and you're going to think, I would like to go to outer space. And you'll just, take out a few credit cards against your wife's better judgment, and then you will buy a rocket, and you're going to have the time of your life.
A 1/3 share of a rocket.
Yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, the application for the astronauts closes today, actually. I looked, I'm not eligible, but
now on what, because it can't be your age.
no, there's like certain criteria you have to have in terms of degrees, like a master's degree or test pilot school. So I did look at the only civilian test pilot school in the country.
Well, if you had the chance to do my BFR, and that probably would have qualified as that.
Yeah.
Well, anything else? Any parting comments or anything else for the good of the order?
Well, I think real quick, we should do a quick little fly-in update.
Yeah. April 26th through the 28th, Erica has promised us beautiful weather for that weekend.
Guaranteed, she said.
Yeah, put in the order yesterday.
Put it in the order yesterday. So at least the request is in. We're going to be coming out very shortly with what Brian has termed as a flight plan with alternates for the weekend. We've come up with kind of a trajectory we'd like to see things go, but you're absolutely not required. You can do your own thing. And then we're going to have an alternate plan in case there's inclement weather. Brian has been promising inclement weather the whole time, but
yeah,
hopefully he's going to be wrong.
I have a Curb Your Enthusiasm coffee mug, and it's got a line right in the middle of it, and above it says half empty, and below it says half empty.
So there's going to be a lot more. We're going to put some information out. I'd also like to encourage that for those attending, if you're not on Discord, send us an email. We'll give you access to the Nashville Fly-In channel and download the app for your phone. So we're going to be doing all of our communication as we get closer, and during the event will be on Discord. What else am I forgetting? Don't forget to fill out the survey. If you're coming and you haven't yet, go to our website, midlifepilotpodcast.com.
Erica, have you come up with your excuse yet for why you're not joining us, or are you going to join us?
Yeah, Mom.
Yeah.
They had muted at the wrong time. I waited a second longer. No, I'd like to come down on Saturday and spend some time. Yeah.
That would be awesome.
We would love to have you, and it would be a lot of fun, more fun if you were here. No pressure. Just make sure you come, so that otherwise we're just going to be... No, we have a rain plan. We have a good weather plan. We're trying to come up with a plan for everything, but we recognize a lot of people are flying in commercial, so we're just going to have a good time. And it's really about spending time with each other and just the community aspect of it. But so at worst, we'll hang out with each other even that much more. But if the weather works out, then we're going to go some places, see some things, do some things, and it'll be awesome. And then otherwise, I'm not sure that we have anything else here. And I know that first, I just want to thank Wyatt. Hopefully, you're not union or requiring any payment for this. But I can't thank you enough, Wyatt, for sticking around for the whole thing and answering questions and giving us honest answers and even calling out your mom on a couple things. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the exact perspective we needed. And so I, too, would like to add my thanks to both you and your mom. And for those of you who don't know, Erica's got an awesome YouTube channel. Aerosafe is what it's called. where she does deep dives into weather briefs. And I am still learning from most of her episodes. Did a deep dive on dry lines after this last episode. Don't see him in Georgia a lot, but I will be planning to fly out west at some point in time, and I may have to experience it. So I do pick up something new on most, if not all, of her videos. So y'all definitely go check that out. All right, closing out episode 71 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Thank you, everybody in the chat, for joining us. We'll see you next week.